I'm hoping this is working. I've got a long intro to get through, and we more than likely have a long video to go through. But as always with the streams, I need to make sure it's working first. Okay, very loud. So, thing one, it's the middle of June. It's a bit hot. The fan and the air conditioner are both on. I always listen back and I never hear them in the video. So if y'all do and it's a bit loud, I apologize. But it's the middle of June. It's summer. It's hot. Hopefully you understand. Thing two. This one's important to me. I streamed a week ago. And for some reason, it just ended abruptly. And I don't really know why it did. I was a bit concerned about it. Xbox has got this weird thing that's been going on the past couple months that I've noticed. It's saying that like captures and like streams will expire and whatnot. And again, the last day that I streamed, it said that. So maybe it was something to do with that. So if there's a chance that this gets broken into two parts, that might be the reason why. But again, I'm going to hope that we don't have to deal with that and that does not happen. Thing three. Have not played my team in a hot minute, so that is why we're on here. But this is, again, more than likely going to be a long video. But this is the NBA off-season outlook. Last year, in the middle of the season and in the off-season, during the playoff, I should say, during the season, during the playoffs, during the off-season, I made a series of videos talking about things I wanted to see happen in the off season. Each video that I made, I ended up changing the name of it, so it ended up finishing up being called the NBA off-season wish list. This year, we're going to have just one long form video. I'm going to hope that I talk about each team a little bit. Some will be more detailed and whatnot. Kind of what I would like to see each team do and some suggestions that I have, Will they listen? Some might, some probably won't. We'll see. But like I said, this is just going to be a long video of it. I like the name, the Offseason Outlook. It's not original, it's not creative, and it's probably used by somebody else as well. But here we go with it. Like I said, going to talk about the offseason because we're finally in it. The season's done. I've been asking for the season to be done since freaking January because I'm a Grizzlies fan, and we just had such a rough season, especially after Ja went out with injury. Congrats to the Celtics. For some, there's just nothing really to talk about there. I'm not even like trying to hate and whatnot. A lot of it kind of comes off as hating, but it's just like, congrats to the Celtics. They won. Whoop-de freaking do. Okay, that definitely sounded like hating. But in this section, I think that I'm going to break it down into three different sections because I have a prelude, section 1, section 2, section 3. So, section 1 will be the rebuild section. Section 2 is the retool section. Section 3 is the reshape. So, rebuild I'll get into. Retool is mainly talking about playoff level contending teams, and then reshape is kind of the middle level teams where you don't really know what to expect with them, and so that is that. So again, we're on my team. There's less than a week left in this season. I have not been playing this as much as I have prior seasons. I'm also going to be playing Clutch Time. Normally I play Triple Threat, but we're going to play some Clutch Time. That way I can level up in that. Here's the team that we will be using. Your screen is not frozen. I just have not freaking moved it. And we will be wearing the Mavs jerseys. Now, this is a little side tangent, but during the course of the playoffs, I wouldn't wear teams' jerseys that were still in the playoffs because if I was to stream, I didn't want it to look like I was like rooting for that team specifically. So that is why I'm finally able to wear these Mavs jerseys again because they got eliminated. And this is the side tangent part, but I really like the city jersey. I have a special feeling for like city jerseys that black city jerseys for teams that normally don't wear black. So, for example, the Mavs normally don't have black jerseys, so this city jersey I like. The Grizzlies are a way better example because they normally don't wear black jerseys, and the past couple of city jerseys they've had have been black. And then, but like the Bulls, for instance, they had the black statement jerseys, the pinstripes, all-time great jerseys, but they had a black city jersey this year, and it kind of was mid and suck, and I don't have a special feeling towards it. That was just a side tangent. I have that on my mind a lot, but this is a good time to talk about it. Like I said, we're going to play some Clutch Time and get into the first section, which is the rebuild question mark. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to get a sip of water first. We can have our opinions with these teams and the NBA in general. A lot of us think that some teams should rebuild. Like we've been saying this for a hot minute about the Bulls. 2 Bulls mentions early on. But every team can't just like rebuild instantly or just tear their team down and deconstruct it. And some teams are okay with just being competing teams. They might not win the championship. It's a case you don't ever really know. Like, if you looked at the Eastern Conference, it was an extremely down year for almost every team except for the Celtics to an extent. But, like, some teams are okay with just being competing. I don't want to say the word mid, but that's probably the word that a lot of people would use. I don't think that was a foul. So, again, I'm going to keep using the Bulls as an example. But I've looked back the past couple of off seasons and trade deadlines, and the past couple of off seasons we've gotten teams that are like, yep, it's time for us to move on. So, last off season we had this with the Wizards and the Blazers. The Wizards moved on from Beal and Porzingis, which I think they should have kept Porzingis, but that's a different story for a different time. But it's time to move on from Beal, and they did that. And then the Blazers obviously traded Damian Lillard. At the deadline, the Raptors are like, yep, we're rebuilding. They traded Siakam and OG. Especially they lost Fred in the offseason as well. The 2022 offseason, the Jazz, it was their turn. They traded Mitchell and Gobert. They knew Tom was ready, etc. And then at the deadline, to an extent, the Nets ended up having to do this, trading KD and Kyrie. And then the 2021 offseason, there wasn't really any team that fit this mold. The team technically was the Spurs because they traded DeJounte, and then the season prior they had traded DeMar, signed and traded DeMar, and just traded DeJounte. And then the better one, the one that like made me like notice this trend was the 2020 offseason, because this is when the Thunder had Chris Paul. They moved on from him and went completely young, except for Al Horford and George Hill. And then to an extent, the Rockets had to go this route when they had to trade Westbrook. And then later on, like not even a month or two later, they had to trade Harden, and that whole saga that ended up happening. And then once we got to the deadline, the Magic were like, yes, it's time for us to move on. They moved on from Vucevic, Gordon, and Fournier. So essentially, again, what I'm trying to get at is every offseason, or even during the middle of the season to this extent that I'm talking about, we have these teams that we think should move on, and it's just a lot of them don't. A lot of them are okay with the positions they're in, but hopefully we need these teams to move on. That way the offseason is interesting and teams can improve and move on, because it's very rare do we get even trades, win-win trades. So, starting with that's why we're now in the rebuild section, because these are the teams that I could see potentially going in that direction. The first one I'll mention is the Bulls. I've mentioned them 3 times already this video, and they're kind of the antithesis of this sentiment, because they are trying to capture that glory they had when Lonzo Ball was playing. They were the #1 seed. Great all around. They had Caruso, Lonzo, Levine, DeRozan, Vucevic. Like DeMar was a freaking MVP candidate for a great majority of that season, and they have not been able to duplicate that because Lonzo has been out for 2 full seasons. They try to replace with Pat Bev. I feel there's another guard that kind of fit that mold that I'm forgetting. And then the resurgence of Kobe White kind of helped them, but it's just like Vucevic and DeRozan are getting up there in age. DeRozan's about to be a free agent. If he moves on, I definitely think they should go the rebuild route. But it seems that every indication is that this team wants to run it back because as of right now, Lonzo should be out there, and they're going to, again, hope they can duplicate that success that they had 2 years ago, almost over 2 years ago now. But again, I think they should go the rebuild route. The other team that I could see in this situation are the Nets because Claxton is a free agent. Also, a little bit going back with the Bulls, I actually have no clue what DeMar should do because he's just a highly effective offensive player that I don't know of like a team like outright out of mind that he like fits with very well. I would say, and I'm only saying this now because I like directly looked at their logo, but the Mavericks, especially like they just went to the finals, they add him, but I don't know what they would give up to give to the Bulls because it would more than likely have to be a signing trade, and I feel that there'd be a little bit of concern defensively with the Mavericks side of things. So again, a lot of this video is just going to be like wishful thinking because again, it's kind of it's a wish list for me and what I would like to see these teams do. So I will say like random trade scenarios, random signings, etc. will be thrown out in the course of this as well. So that was just one randomly off the top of my head. Again, with the Nets, Claxton's about to be a free agent. I would hope that he ends up going to Memphis, but that's something we'll cover a little bit later. I think it's 50-50 of him going back to Brooklyn or him signing with a different team. And if he's gone, should go the rebuild route. There's a lot of rumors about Mikal Bridges. A lot of them are that they want to keep him, but a lot of teams would give up a lot to end up with Mikal. Again, you trade Mikal, you go on the rebuild route. But I also feel with the Nets that they might be like 1 to 2 pieces more than likely away from being a competent top-level playoff team because they're in the Eastern Conference. I'm going to say this again over and over again, that the Eastern Conference just, if you looked at it this season in the playoffs, not as competitive as you would hope and think. So a lot of teams have a chance. And again, I said this once Jrue Holiday was traded to the Blazers, like Brooklyn should hop on that because I don't think it would take much to get him. And they would have been so dominant defensively because they would have been Jrue, Mikal, more than likely Cam Thomas, more than likely Dorian Finney, Claxton, all great defenders. You could even throw Ben Simmons into that situation. Again, probably 1 to 2 of those would have had to like been moved on to like acquire Jrue. It's also fitting that boom, here's Jrue Holiday right here. But I was mainly just saying that way they can upgrade over Dinwiddie, and eventually they ended up doing that, but it wasn't much of an upgrade because it was Dennis Schroeder. But the Nets, I could see being in the rebuild situation. The team that is more than likely like at the top of the list are the Atlanta Hawks because they have the number 1 pick. They have DeJounte and Trey, and I just don't think, and a lot of people don't think that this duo can work out very well, and it just seems that every year they've taken a step back from that conference finals run that they had. But I can understand, and I've kind of always said I would be hesitant about trading Trae Young because he is their guy. He is their star. A lot of people just want him traded that way. He can, like, build his star factor back because, that playoff run they had in the Eastern Conference, like, Trae Young was, like, such a notable name and talked about, and I'm saying this in quotes, like, the biggest villain, etc., and we just have not, again, seen that duplicated. The DeJounte trade is kind of They were very fortunate that the pick that ended up being the number 1 pick was not one that they ended up giving up. So I feel that's why I would look more into trading DeJounte. Again, if they're trading Trey, they're probably going the rebuild route. But I think that this team's probably the top of the list of the rebuild section. But we'll wait and see there. Last team in the East to talk about, and this one is probably more than likely not a rebuild, but a retool. The Heat. Now, I'm only mentioning this because there was a lot of rumor. Oh, Jesus Christ. There's a lot of rumor and innuendo about this Jimmy Butler situation. It was mainly a big thing after the Heat were eliminated from the playoffs and that Jimmy wants a max extension, etc. And then, I almost said Greg Popovich, but Pat Riley had his quotes, and a lot of people were like, oh, this is going to stir the pot, but it's Jimmy Butler. I don't think those comments, like, really bothered and affected him to, like, much extent. I think the not getting the contract would probably upset him a little bit more, but I just don't think they're going to trade Jimmy. And again, I don't really see this being a rebuild if they traded Jimmy, but it would be more of a retool. And I also, outside of the six, if Jimmy got traded, it would be crazy because there's a lot of teams that I could see throwing their name into the hat. So now we're on to the Western Conference side, and it's interesting as hell because all these are specific division teams. Now, the first one that I will mention are the Suns, because again, I just think they're stubborn, and again, every indication indicates that they're going to run this team back, but I just don't really know what they can do to improve this team because I just think they're going to be stuck at the same level, and that almost every trade is going to lead them in the same position that they were in, and I don't really know where there are improvements that could be made, and it would be extremely good if they can get value for KD or value for KD while it's still there. But again, every indication seems that they're more likely going to run it back. And this would have been a hotter topic to talk about once they were eliminated from the playoffs, but that was a hot minute ago. So another team, Pacific Division as well. Warriors. They didn't make the playoffs. It kind of felt weird. And we've been saying this ever since last offseason, but like, it's just the end of the dynasty. Where Clay, a lot of indications that he's ready to go, and that he unfollowed, bitter ending with the Warriors. It kind of sucks. As somebody that has grown up and like hating the Warriors, but like at least not appreciating, but like respecting what they did, and like Curry and Clay like are an all-time great duo and friendship, Splash Bros. I don't think he should take a lot of this anger and animosity out on Curry. So like, I posted them after their last finals win, and I was like, damn, that's pretty salty. But again, they have a lot that they could probably. I don't really even know how to talk about them, to be honest. But it's just like, if they could get anything for Wiggins, that would probably help because he just had a down season. But they're just in such a weird situation. But I also don't think it would be a complete rebuild because all signs are pointing towards Curry staying there for life. Understandable. But it's like, if you move it on, you're willing to like let Clay go and move on from Clay. You might be willing to do the same for Draymond. I don't really know with the Warriors. So I just think, again, it's a 50-50 side of things, but I think a lot of it would mainly be a retool, but it would probably be considered a rebuild because they'd more than likely be trying to get on the younger side. Next two teams, obviously, if I'm talking about the Pacific Division, you got to talk about the two LA teams, and the first one that I'll talk about are the Clippers because they have a lot of free agents. Outside of Kawhi, you have Harden, Westbrook, and Paul George. It sucks that they have not. Oh, Jesus, we're down. I just realized this. We're down by one. Let's concentrate here. That's what I missed. But this team has not been healthy in the playoffs outside of the freaking bubble, and it sucks. That was a long time ago, and that might have been their best chance, maybe. It's a 50, I would say 75-25 chance that PG stays because a lot of the indications are he's going to Philly, especially during the finals. He's right next to Joel Embiid, and everybody's like making the eyeball emojis and winking a nod, like, "Oh, we understand this." I will say this: this is another wishful thinking situation, and again, I keep. He made that. He made that. Are you kidding me? I ain't got no chance. We're gonna have to go to overtime. This is a wishful thinking situation because the Clippers are in the fortunate, unfortunate. I'm going to say unfortunate, and I'm going to put the un part in brackets because finally they're moving on to their new arena. You can't be going to a new arena trying to sell tickets and have a rebuilding team. Nobody really wants to see that. They also, again, have Kawhi. I think a lot of what made the Kawhi and PG duo at first feel special is that they're from California, they're happy to be in California, etc. I don't know if that sentiment is still there for both. I think it would probably be there more for Kawhi because he signed the extension, etc. And he also has 2 rings where PG doesn't. And a lot of teams... Oh, no, let's concentrate here. So, I don't really know what route they're going down. I also didn't even really mention Harden or, to an extent, Westbrook. Westbrook has mentioned that he wants to stay. Bro, if I let him score again, I would have been pretty upset. There we go. Shout out Cam Reddish. The wishful thinking part. Because I think it's a win-win scenario for both sides. Sign and trade Paul George for Julius Randle. For the Knicks side of things, they've been slated to go after PG for last offseason, a little bit during this season. In the playoffs, and this is, again, I'll get into it when I talk about the Knicks, but they were better without Randle. And a lot of what I keep saying with the Knicks is that more than likely, a lot of the talk was like, oh, just imagine if Randle's here. Just imagine if Randle here. I just think that a lot of what, with them being so good in the playoffs, was like Randle wasn't there. And now, I'm not a Randle hater. And again, I'm trying to get him in a good situation here. But I feel this would be a win for the Knicks because they're getting somebody that fits their team. Now, I'm not going to say necessarily their timeline, but Brunson, Paul George, or Hart, and or DiVincenzo. Move OG to the 4 because I feel that OG can definitely play the 4. Also, this would mean that they would re-sign OG. There's a rumor going on that might not happen because he wants more money, but I think they're willing to throw him the bag because they gave up a lot to get him, and to only get him for not even half of the season would be pretty nuts. And then Hartenstein and or Robinson, whatever they want to do at center. Where, like I said, I just feel that PG fits the team a little bit better. For the Clippers, you're getting something back for PG because any other indication is that, A, you're losing him for nothing, or you're getting younger pieces that might not necessarily help them. And at least Randle, again, he would definitely fit the Clippers timeline. He would help the team be competent and contending still, and that they still would have some areas to fill. But I like that sign and trade scenario. So that's wishful thinking number 2. What was number 1? I was talking about DeMar on the Mavs. It kind of is what it is. Lastly, last team to talk about in this rebuild question mark section, the Lakers. LeBron. It's essentially LeBron. I will also say it's a case, and I said this when they got eliminated. Y'all just lost back-to-back years to the Nuggets and only won 1 game out of those 2 series. And Laker fans, NBA fans in general, are just saying, will they ever be able to beat this team? Now, a lot of this season was talking about, oh, LeBron wants to play with Bronny. And I'm not going to talk about the draft. I'm not going to talk about Bronny. And especially because a lot of the rumor that came out today was from Rich Paul I don't even know if you can really call it a rumor. Declaration, I guess, was that the Bronny and LeBron playing together factor doesn't mean as much as it would at the beginning of the season. But again, essentially what I'm trying to get at is, like, I don't think the Lakers, they would have to make a massive change. Now, where the hell does that massive change come from? Definitely not LeBron. Definitely not AD. You're more than likely, I don't know, D'Lo, sign and trade, maybe. Reeves, Hachimura, I don't know how much they value those two. It seems they do a lot, because almost any trade rumor from in the season were that they didn't want to give those guys up. So I don't really know where they can improve. Also, it's just, I feel that it's the time to move on. Now, I will say, I think LeBron probably wants to stay. I think he wants to stay with the Lakers. He's happy in LA, but he's not happy with the team having to always be in the play-in, and just at his age, year 22, I believe, having to play as much now. He probably wants a little bit of a rest, and that he has not been fortunate enough to get that the past couple of years. So I think he wants to stay, but he also wants to contend, and it's going to be extremely difficult to do that, and I could see them staying in the same situation. Now, wishful thinking. This is at the top of my wish list, to be honest, because I'm not a big Lakers fan. I know I got the sports logo, but that's not the Lakers. I want to see LeBron in Philly, because I feel that he fits their timeline and situation more. Now, when I talk about Philly in a couple minutes, I'm going to say operate like it's your last chance. I think LeBron, for his, and I'm putting this in quotation, legacy and want to win another championship, that's the same sentiment that needs to be had. I've said this several times already in this video, but the Eastern Conference, we saw how it was this year. He would help them out. He also has a guy that he can somewhat duplicate or be close to, that is very similar to the playing style and X factor and on-court production of Anthony Davis, who is his best teammate. They have a certified number 2 guy in Maxey, because I'm 99% sure he's going to be back. And with LeBron and Embiid together, I would imagine that other free agents would be willing to get there. Now, I think the bit of concern factor is that more than likely the whole team would change then, which, to be fair, is kind of the more than likely the route they're going with anyways. And I like LeBron being with the Sixers a little bit more than I do Paul George. And the main thing, and this is the thing that I've been saying all year, if LeBron leaves, is what the hell do you do with Anthony Davis? How do you keep Anthony Davis happy? Because you're probably not signing another free agent. You're probably not signing another free agent that would keep AD happy. It would be and you're, again, probably not getting anything back for LeBron. You get your things back to rebuild with via trading AD, especially while he still has value. And again, I think AD is a name that holds a lot of value and brings a lot to the table that a lot of teams are going to be willing to give stuff up with. So, and again, me personally, it would mean the Lakers are in a rebuild, and I don't have to keep seeing them play every freaking week on national TV, etc. I'm not really a Lakers hater, but I'm still salty about the playoffs a couple of years ago. So there's that. So that is the rebuild question mark section. So those are my teams I can see going the rebuild route. I also didn't see the time on the clock and that while they were attacking me that close. But now we are at the retool mark. Now, what I mean by retool is that these, again, were the playoff level teams that just need some improvements. And some teams, maybe not. Maybe just stay the same. You are okay in the situation that you're in. You just needed some more experience. So the first team I'm going to talk about are the Sacramento Kings, because I just got done talking about the other 4 Pacific Division teams. They need defense. That is the main thing that they need. Now, the guy that I think that could like help them out defensively the most would be OG Anunoby. I think it would be next to impossible to end up with OG Anunoby. I will mainly just say I think it's time to move on from Harrison Barnes because you're not going to move on from Fox. You're not going to move on from Sabonis. I love Keegan Murray, as you see him right here, perfect timing. Herter and or Monk, I don't know. It's just like I think the defensive X factor needs to come from Harrison Barnes. Now again, I think OG would have helped that out exponentially. So you find somebody that's kind of an OG Anunoby archetype. I think a name that comes to mind is Jeremy Grant because I saw his name in the his name's been in the trade rumor for the Kings for a minute. And again, I feel he produces a little bit more offensively, or at the same level at least as Harrison Barnes. Now, I saw a trade rumor. And here's the thing that I hate about myself personally is that when I talk about rumors, I never give the source because I don't like the tweet or whatnot or like the report that I end up seeing it with. So at the end of the day, if something is like that important, I'll go out of my way to source it. But there's a suggestion of Zach LaVine and Caruso to the Kings. Now, I don't necessarily all know what would be involved in that. I wouldn't hate that because, I think it pushes the Bulls a little bit into the rebuild that I was talking about at the very beginning of the video. The fourth, maybe fifth mention of the Bulls already. LaVine's been linked with the Kings several times in his career. I feel he's a bit of an I want LaVine to prove who he is again because he had a down year and his credibility and I'm going to use a word that I don't like using. Aura went down a little bit. And just, I think people forgot who the hell he was. So I kind of want him to get back to the level of player that he's been in the past. Now, if he was with the Kings, I don't know if he would be able to do that. But I don't necessarily hate that scenario. And especially with Caruso, he's adding a lot to their defense that I was asking them to do. Now, here's the issue. I don't know how money and situation can line that up, but I don't hate that. Also, last bit of this, a couple years ago, was it either last year, I did a franchise GM mode with the Kings, and I traded for LaVine. It was Kevin Herter and somebody else to get LaVine, and it was a great-ass team, but to be fair, we had... Oh, another name that kind of fits that archetype, because this is the other, was Wiggins, so... I don't think they could be able to add all of them in the same offseason. So, that was the last of the talks of the Kings. So, other teams to talk about. Going through the Western Conference. Pelicans. I said this last offseason. They need to make a change. I wasn't that high going into the Pelicans going into this season because it's just like we keep seeing the same thing over and over again. And they had the change for the whole season. And that change is that we saw a lot more Zion than normal. And it sucked that when we needed to see him the most, he was not there. That was it was heartbreaking, to be honest. And it made for a terrible playoff series with the Pelicans and the Thunder. Where if he was there, things might have been... It definitely would have been a lot different. A little bit different, at least. All the rumors and situations, and you could even say during the season series, was like, yeah, it's time to move on from Ingram. It's time to move on from Valanciunas because he's a free agent. I personally think it's time to move on from CJ, or at least have him come off the bench. I know that might be a hot take because he's making a lot of freaking money, but I didn't think he had that great of a playoff run. Or Trey Murphy and Herb Jones, you're extremely high on. You're high on because here's your number one pick, your franchise changer. And there's like trading Ingram, maybe trading for DeJounte. You can do DeJounte, Herb, Trey, Zion. You could, again, if you want to keep CJ, you can do the same. I don't know where that center improvement comes from. I also, again, I don't think they want to pay Ingram all that money, but it's time for a change because we're, again, just seeing the same old, same old. They're very much the Hawks of the Western Conference, but at least the Hawks had that successful playoff run where the Pelicans haven't been. They've had 2 playoff wins. They didn't even get a win this year. So we'll see what happens there. Now, here we go. This is the team I want to talk about the most. Actually, I would say it is, but I'm not really going to say that much. But my Memphis Grizzlies had a season from hell. essentially, I'm not going to say it's definitely not all we have to do, but the top of the list, because I've been screaming and shouting it for months and months. Center. We need a freaking center. I want a center. It hurts that a lot of it is like, oh, the center, they're very high on so-and-so from the draft. I'm going to say something that I don't want to say. A sexy name. I know this is thrown out a lot, that, like, quota. But I want to, like, experienced guy, because in the Western Conference, you're going to have to deal with the Timberwolves. You're going to have Gobert. You have to deal with this guy right here, Wemby. You're probably still going to have to deal with AD. Most importantly, you're going to have to deal with Jokic. I want a guy that is experienced and at least could put up a battle against these guys. Where if it's a rookie, I don't know necessarily if they'll be able to do that. Over time, they probably could, but I want stuff for right now. I should, again, do the wishful thinking part, but there's a lot of names that I would be satisfied with us adding. I even, like, broke it down like there's 3 sections. There's, yes, I want this 100%. At the top of that list is Jared Allen. There's the middle section to where, like, if we traded for them, I would be okay with it. I don't really have a name off the top of my head. And then there's the section of, hell no, I don't want that at all. That's highlighted by Nurkic. Like, I don't want Nurkic at all. So, we just need a center. I will say, I want us to win. I just want us to win. I want us to compete. I want us to be back to the grind, as that's probably something that they would say. I'm going to try to do an alley-oop. It's probably not going to work. Oh, it did work. Boom. I just want us to get a center. You can also say the same sentiment for the Thunder and move Chet to the power forward, Jalen Williams to the small forward, Dort to the shooting guard. Obviously, Shea, top 2 in the MVP conversation, Gilgeous-Alexander at the point guard. And they have a lot of assets and new word added to the repertoire, another new word there, that they can get the center. So they're very similar to the Grizzlies. Obviously, you noticed that I did not say one name, because I think they should move on from him and or have him come off the bench. That way it's not completely out of the realm of possibility. So we'll see what happens there. But they probably need to go down that route as well. Almost done with the Western Conference teams in this section. Oh, why would you do that? Kind of makes it easier. Nuggets. Bench help, because Christian Braun and Peyton Watson are good bench players, but they're very young. Didn't have the best playoffs. I think mainly for the Nuggets is A, add the bench help. B, and this is something that I said, I just think they were tired and exhausted as hell, because they had just went to the finals, just had this long, I'm going to say long playoff run, because they lost 1, 2, 4 games their whole playoff run when they won the championship. They just needed rest. They're tired. I compared them to the Spurs, because they have Jokic, where the Spurs had Duncan. Now, obviously, Duncan's defensive, way better defensive than Jokic, but the main comparison there is that they are the best player, top 2 players in the world during their time period, and at the end of the day, they probably don't really give a shit. They have Jamal Murray, Tony Parker, underrated point guards that elevate their play in the playoffs, and then they just have the guys that come in and out and fit their timeline and fit their mold, and they can plug and play and change. Now, the main difference is that A, the Spurs have a lot more championships, and B, we're a better defensive team. But I just think most importantly, they need rest and bench help. At least like one notable name to help their bench out. An a la Bruce Brown type of player. So, last team in the West to talk about in this section are the Wolves, that I don't really have that dramatic of a suggestion. They're more likely going to run it back. I know there's rumors and a situation going on there with their ownership and what the ownership wants to do and all that. I don't know. I'm talking about like on-court stuff. That's not really on-court stuff. I don't really know how you do that. But you over-delivered this season and did a lot better than you probably would. It's going to be very difficult to duplicate that, but they definitely had a great playoff run. It just sucks that That conference finals was that team just seemed completely different than the team we'd saw the prior 2 rounds. But again, maybe that was a bit of the exhaustion route that I keep talking about. How did that not go in? I understand it was far, but like I was right on the dot. Now, Eastern Conference side of things to talk about this. Orlando Magic, very happy for them because I was very high on them going into the year, and they went to a 7-game series in the first round. They definitely need to add some shooting because that was very, very, very apparent during the playoffs. Almost every rumor involves them getting Klay Thompson. I ain't against Klay going there. I don't think it'd be a Dwayne Wade in the Cavs situation. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. But like, I think him going there helps because he's experienced. And if they're to add, because like the name I was suggesting, I think was maybe Buddy Hield, because that's another name they've been linked to. Where Klay has, like Buddy Hield's been in the league a long time as well, but like Klay a little bit longer. And I don't completely hate that. Now the only like glaring thing is that the last 2 games that Klay and the Magic played, Klay didn't make a shot. Franz Wagner, the game 7. I don't think he hit a shot. I know that he had not a great shooting game, but he might have at least scored. I don't know. I just remember it was not that good. So I just feel that will be highlighted because that's when you need these players and your team to perform the most, is when you're in a freaking win-or-go-home game. And that was the last time they were in that situation. So that's a bit glaring. Also, probably improve on center. It's not like a top priority, but if you probably could, I would suggest it. It's a wait-and-see situation. But I think the shooting and offensive help is needed a little bit more because defensively they were pretty good all year. Cavaliers. I really don't know with them. I think they're kind of in the same situation as the Timberwolves, and I'm mainly comparing them because they were the 2 teams that benefited from the Gobert and Mitchell trade and the Jazz rebuilding. But obviously the Wolves had the better playoff run, and but the Cavs were injured because they didn't have Mitchell and Allen at the end. And then once they got eliminated, all this like rumor and turmoil, etc., was coming out with the team. But it's just like every trade scenario that I have seen from them like leaves a hole. So like, for example, people were suggesting Darius Garland for Brandon Ingram. So if they're doing that, who the hell's going to be their point guard? Is it Mitchell? I don't think that's the worst idea, but I think there's a bit of a concern factor. Jared Allen. Any trade that I've like seen is just them getting young players for Jared Allen. I don't think that really helps them. And again, you would have moved Mobley to the center. That's not the worst idea. It could work out, but it's like, then what the hell do you do at power forward? So I don't really know what this team does. I imagine they run it back. It's also crazy that all year, because I was talking about this at the beginning of the year, it's like all year, it's like, what if Donovan doesn't extend? Oh, they should trade him. They should trade him. That way they get something, etc. And then it seemed like the playoffs ended, and that went down, and the narrative switched to they should trade Garland. They should trade Allen. This is weird. That was a weird dynamic. So I don't really know what this team. I imagine they run it back, and if they lose Mitchell next offseason, I don't know. They're just in a weird situation, but I imagine they run it back, and I'm not completely against that because I don't know really how they improve. That is what it is. Knicks, I already kind of talked about them a little bit. I think, again, this is a team that needs rest because they played the absolute hell out of their players. They had a very entertaining and good playoff run. I already talked about how I would like to see PG on their team, but I just think rest is mainly a factor. And if you can add experience and a little bit of offense to the team, do so. The Pacers, same sentiment as the Wolves that I mentioned. You over-delivered. I don't think there's that dramatic of a change. I think this is another team that if they could get Paul George, I know there's rumor that Paul George was willing to go back there. I don't know how the hell they do that without like giving up something of importance. So I don't know how the hell that would end up going, but I don't completely hate that. But I want to see them on a higher level or playoff level with Benedict Mathurin. So that might be the factor and change that happens. Because I was high on I had Benedict Mathurin as in the top 3 in the MIP, and then he got injured, so he never really. He also didn't get to start a lot, so I think they should. They don't need to necessarily make any changes. Obviously, bring Siakam back. Like I am fully imagine that's what's going to end up happening. Last 2 teams to talk about in this section. 76ers and the Milwaukee Bucks, because they have the same sentiment. You operate like it's your last freaking chance. The Bucks, I was extremely high on going into the season after the Damian Lillard trade. I thought Giannis was going to have a all-time great season. I thought he was going to carry the defense and put the same level on offense or even better. And I thought Damian Lillard was going to make it better. And it just seemed like a season for hell from them. And it's crazy that that's what happened after the freaking Damian Lillard trade. But a lot of their players are very experienced. Like, it's weird because I've kind of always thought Giannis as a younger player. But, like, he's getting up there. Like, he's not extremely old. I don't like throwing the old word out. But, like, there's more old and experienced players on the Bucks than young. But again, I don't really know how they improve because they're kind of in that Cavs situation where they don't really have much wiggle room to improve. And like any scenario that ends up trades, like, oh, how do you change without like lessening something else? So I don't really know. You gotta operate it like it's your last chance. With the Sixers, I talked about how I want to see LeBron on the Sixers. I don't know. I don't think that's that difficult. I just like it a little bit more than PG because I feel PG and the Sixers are somewhat similar. Now, me saying that's like, well, why don't you want to see them? It's just like, I don't think PG like helped that team dominate and get to the next level. I think they would probably stay at the same level. Also, they strike out and don't get any big name to join Embiid. Again, it's very fitting that like I timed that stuff perfectly. That is great. I have no clue what the hell they do. I really don't. That is kind of an AD situation. Like if they don't, how the hell do you keep Embiid happy? Because running a very similar team back that they just had this season is asking for trouble and for an unsuccessful season. Because it's fine. I'm not gonna say it's finals or bust. It's 100% conference finals or bust though. So we'll wait and see what happens with them. Also, I don't think I mentioned this, but I'm not gonna talk about the Mavs. I already did talk about the Mavs, and like they should probably look for like a small forward or like a third scoring option. But I'm not gonna talk about in detail the Mavs and the Celtics because they were literally just in the freaking finals. So there's that. So now we're at the last section. Let me write this down. 48-20. The other teams. Because like I said, I wanted to go the route because we had the rebuild section, the retool section, the reshape section. These are the non-playoff teams, but they're not necessarily rebuilding. They are. A lot of the teams are rebuilding, and it's also just a lot of scenarios where I don't really know what the hell they need to do, or they need to keep doing the same. And some of these teams are on the cusp of making the playoffs. So the first team to talk about was not a team on the cusp of making the playoffs. Was the Portland Trail Blazers. That's hilarious. Let me get a sip of water first, because it's been a freaking minute since I've done that. This is me personally, want to see them trade Simons and Jeremy Grant. Definitely Simons, because I think they have the real deal backcourt duo in Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe, especially because they're on their rookie contracts and Simons is not, and Simons I imagine has value. I'd be surprised if he didn't. And I just think they'd be beating around the bushes if they try to keep all three and or play all three because I'm a positions guy, and I think that I don't think you could play Sharp at the 3, Simons at the 2, Scoot at the 1, or flop those 2. So I would personally like to see them trade Simons. Now, the thing that sucks is they didn't really get to experiment or test this out this year because of injuries for Simons and Sharp. But I personally I'm very high on Sharp. And I think Scuda have a better season 2 than season 1. I'd be surprised if he didn't. With Grant, I just feel he's kind of on the older side and has value. If you can move on from Robert Williams and Malcolm Brogdon, it's kind of surprising that they're still on the team and feel very forgotten again, mainly due to injuries. Might do so. I don't think this team is completely bad on paper. That's the main thing I'm trying to get at here. Also, here's because I was saying, going back to the Grizzlies, because when Steven Adams, I'm glad they called that a shooting foul. When Steven Adams got injured, literally like days before the start of the season, heartbreaking, terrible thing. I was like, we go for Robert Williams. Please go for Robert Williams. He's right there. Because this is right when, again, the Damian Lillard and then to an extent the Drew Holiday trade happened. I'm like, go for Tom Lord. I was saying that mainly for, hey, he played with Marcus Smart. Hey, he knows how to rebound. I think he can play very well. It fits with Jaren. Tom Lord was in a Defensive Player of the Year conversation a couple years ago, as well as Jaren, as well as Smart. I was like, damn, this fits everything. I don't think we'd have to give up much to do that. And I was like, it's Tom Lord or bust. I'm like, it's Tom Lord or bust. And then he got freaking injured and had surgery. I think he would be at the top of my middle of the list of like, if we traded for him, I would probably be a little bit upset, but I would get over it. And mainly, like I said, the upset part, it has nothing to do with his on-court play. It would be nothing to do with it. It would be very much, I'm hoping that he can stay healthy to help us out situation. So I think he's at the top of that middle tier list that I had for the Grizzlies. I'm sorry to go back to talk about the Grizzlies, but it did really bother me that I didn't have a name for that section where I did with Jared Allen and Nurkic on the other side. And again, it's mainly just saying for the Blazers, they have a good team on paper. I really like a lot of the players that are there in Portland. And if you remember and go back to my, oh, hell yeah, right there, my awards predictions and just like predictions for the season, I was like, I'm very excited to see this team play. And then a lot of the guys that I wanted to see play, a.k.a. Sharp, didn't end up playing. So, a lot of the season at least. So, I really like the Trailblazers. I'm not that against them right now. The Jazz, I would imagine, a lot of the rumors saying that they want to trade for a star. That way they can get back to the playoffs. That's fine and dandy and understandable because a lot of my NBA fandom, the Jazz have just been the team that's there. And now we're finally in a time period and window where they haven't been. Like last year they were, this year not so much. And they definitely have assets and ways that they can get a star. But I would imagine and slightly hope that this is another year of them in the same situation that they've been in. And they're kind of, I like Lauri Markkanen. And again, I think if I was to go back to the rebuild point that I was making earlier, if they trade Lauri, they're closer to a rebuild than being in the playoffs and whatnot. And Lauri's been in the rumor mill the last year or so. I personally don't like that because I think he's the guy there for Utah. And I wouldn't really want to see them give up on him. So I like to see them keep Lauri. The Rockets, another team. This is the main team I was trying to talk about. Like, they were close to making the playoffs. That was crazy that they had that run almost getting into the plan, and it would have been nuts if they got rid of the Warriors. Sadly, that didn't happen. And they're kind of in the same situation where, again, I wouldn't mind seeing them run this team back a little bit if they can make a like dramatic, like hypothetically, because a lot of the rumors has been them trying to get or Brooklyn trying to get their picks back from Houston, and there's been several scenarios of that. But like, if you can get McHale for Dillon and picks, I am against that. That is a dramatic change. I would 110% be salty about it personally because I'm a Grizzlies fan. And to some extent, that was probably the trade scenario we tried to do to get McHale a couple of seasons ago. And I would be salty if another team was able to do that, and especially double down. And they have Steven Adams. Maybe, are they trying to be the Grizzlies? Like, come on. I'm doing the little question mark face there. But again, I wouldn't mind seeing them run it back. But again, I think here's what I wrote down exactly. A lot of the trade rumors that they're in situations, it's like they just want to make a trade to make a trade. I don't think necessarily you have to go that route, especially when you are almost in the plan and you have a lot of good young players that fit your team and timeline. If there's like somebody that's like, I don't want to be, if like Jalen Green was like, I don't want to be here, I want this X amount of money because he's going to be extension eligible, then I could slightly understand it, but, you know, I don't think that situation is going to happen. Last team to talk about in the West. You've been seeing him for the past 50-plus minutes. The San Antonio Spurs and Victor Wembanyama. I think there's definitely a route and scenario, and it's also pretty crazy that these three teams that I've just talked about, I've essentially said, just run the team back. I think Wemby, I think almost anybody could say this, Wemby is a player that you could speed up your timeline for because he's here right now and just going to get better, and the player that he already is extremely nuts and whatnot. I've also made the bold take that I see Wemby winning like 3 of the next 5 defensive players. He's winning a defensive player of the year. Like, I will say, without a doubt, he's winning at least 1 defensive player of the year award. If I wanted to make it extremely bold, I would say 3 of the next 5. Hopefully, Jaren Jackson Jr. is winning the other 2. Hell, maybe Marcus Smart and Vince Williams Jr. is winning the other 2. We'll see. But Wemby is definitely a player that you can speed up your timeline for. Now, I will say, I would go the route of not necessarily, if there's a team that needs to like orchestrate a 3-team trade, and again, I keep talking about these timelines and situations, like the example I'm going to use here is like the Cavaliers, where they could give up something and it kind of like leaves a hole. I wouldn't give up a lot for a player, but if there's a player in a situation to where you get someone that's an improvement for your team and you're not giving up a lot, I would like to see that happen. But I think Wemby, again, is a guy that you could spend a lot and speed up your timeline up for. So it'll be an interesting season for the Spurs. And if they kind of went the opposite route, it would be a little bit disappointing, more so boring, I feel. We got 4 more teams to talk about, all in the Eastern Conference. First one, the Charlotte Hornets. I want to give them a shout-out / a thank you. Because for the past couple of years, mainly this year, I was like, please move on from Terry Rozier and Gordon Hayward. NBA fans are kind of over it. We're ready to see you move on. And they finally did that. Also, now they finally have like 2 competent and consistent players to build around in LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller. It definitely sucks, again, that they haven't really been able to see their team the last 2 years because LaMelo's been hurt. But at least Brandon Miller is the real deal, because it's pretty insane that like going into the season, so many people thought he was going to be. I personally didn't think this. I also want to be known, and I've been on the record as saying it, but I did not think that was going to be the route, and I did not think it was the craziest thing that they drafted him over Scoot. At the time, people were like shaking their heads and rolling their eyes at it. So the Hornets at least have a competent team and duo to build around, and there's definitely holes that need to be filled. per se. And they're kind of maybe the Spurs route where you go and get the improvements but don't overspend on it. Maybe you do. I would say probably not, because they overspent on Gordon Hayward and Rozier, and years back, Bismack Biyombo, Nick Batum, and those just none of those worked. None of those worked. But if there's a trade scenario and situation that you can do that improvement in, I would look into doing that. The other team that kind of fits that route are the Toronto Raptors. And again, they have definitely a guy to build around there, and Rookie of the Year, I'm going to say Rookie of the Year, Scotty Barnes. They have RJ Barrett, that I love that he's on the Raptors because he's Canadian. And I feel any Raptor that ends up being Canadian kind of, because there's always the like rumor or just like situation to where players, and I'm putting this in quotations, don't want to play in Toronto. And more so, you would feel that a Canadian wouldn't mind it, and because they're at home. So when that RJ trade happened, I really liked that trade for both the Knicks and the Raptors. If there's a improvement situation to be made in certain positions, I'm mainly looking at the center position, because I feel Quickly can be your future point guard. RJ shooting guard, Scotty at the 3 or the 4, depending on how you feel. Also, Kelly Olynyk there, because I keep mentioning the Canadian quota. They don't have to do anything that crazy, is essentially what I'm trying to get at. So now we have our last two teams, and I apologize to both fan bases because they've definitely had it hard the last couple of years, mainly this last year. The Detroit Pistons and the Washington Wizards, and I wrote down for both teams no man's land. I feel that mainly more for the Wizards, because with the Pistons at least, also I might have just called this team the Pelicans. I 100% mean the Pistons. But with the Pistons, at least they have a guy to build around in Cade Cunningham. I don't know if the Wizards have that. Especially because, again, with Cade, he was drafted by the Pistons. He was the #1 pick for the Pistons. With the Wizards, Denny was a high draft pick for him. I don't think Denny and Cade, like, they're probably, like, close, maybe, but, like, Cade's definitely a tier or two above Denny. I know Denny had a great year, so I'm not trying to, like, give backhanded comments or diss Denny. But I don't really know what the hell these teams can do to, like, improve. Like, I really don't. That's why I wrote no man's land. Now, the Pistons can throw a lot of money at players. The main one that I've seen is Nick Claxton and Tobias Harris, which with Claxton, I think it's crazy because they have Jalen Duren. You know, if you're willing to trade him and get rid of him, send him to Memphis because that's where he played college, and he fits the team very well. Jamal Crawford really wants this ball. But ultimately, I don't really know what the hell they need to do. Because I think the Pistons will be a better team this next season than they were this season. But that being said, that's not really a compliment because they were not that good this year. It's a bit insane. So, my throat is itching from allergies and talking for an hour straight, but I essentially got everything done, and this was not as long as I expected it to be, so I'm very happy with this. So hopefully you are as well. I should have my free agency predictions up next week, closer to time to the start of free agency. If you noticed, I did not talk about the draft in this video because I haven't kept up with the draft, going into the draft prospects as much as I would have liked to going into this year. But considering most of the season was spent with experts and people that know about the draft saying this is a bad class, I didn't really feel there's a need to like put that much time into it. So, and it's also nuts that I'm saying that as a Grizzlies fan and knowing that we would have a high pick. but the draft is next week is essentially what I'm trying to get at. So if something dramatic happens, and something that happened last year draft week is what I keep thinking about last year draft week was the Marcus Smart trade. So I'm hoping to God this week coming that I get to make some reaction videos to some trades happening. I'm very much hoping that I can do that. So those will be the videos you'll be seeing this week. And like I already said, gets my free agency predictions closer to the time the start of free agency. So to close this video out, I'm going to be generous. And this is probably going to be a wet fart of an ending. I'm going to open one of these Regal packs. I know that the day this is uploaded, these packs are going to be gone. So here we go. Wrap this video up. Ha, nothing. Najee freaking Marshall. I said it was going to be a wet fart. So, thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I enjoyed making it and writing the notes down for all of this, as I essentially covered a series worth of notes and content into one video. So, again, thank you all for watching. Like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. I'm out.